The content presented in this documentary is for educational and historical analysis only. It is not an endorsement of any criminal activity or organization. Viewer discretion is advised. Imagine a world where every rule you've ever known simply vanishes. For millions in the early 1990s, this wasn't a fantasy. It was reality. The Soviet Union collapsed, and with it, the very idea of a predictable life. Out of this chaos, a new aristocracy emerged. They weren't from noble families. They were from the streets. They were the Bratva. And they didn't just seize power and money, they launched a revolution of style. This is not just a story of crime. It's a story of a culture shock expressed through gold, German engineering, and a desperate, violent grasp for a new kind of dream. To understand the sheer scale of their consumption, you have to understand the profound poverty, both material and spiritual, of the Soviet era. This was a society where standing in line for hours to get a single bottle of vodka or a pair of shoes was normal. Color was absent. Choice was non-existent. A banana was an exotic luxury. When the system fell, the hunger wasn't just for wealth. It was for everything that had been denied. The Bratva's spending wasn't just lavish, it was corrective. It was an attempt to compensate for decades of deprivation in a single explosive decade. This explains why their taste wasn't refined. It was aggressive. It wasn't about subtlety, it was about volume. The philosophy was simple. If one is good, 10 are better. If a bottle of vodka is standard, then a bottle of Cristal champagne that costs more than a car is the only acceptable choice. This was a performance designed to annihilate the memory of the past. Their fashion choices were a deliberate language. The iconic tracksuit, often from brands like Kappa or Lacoste, was a symbol of leisure and newfound freedom from manual labor. But it was also practical, easy to move in and cheap enough to discard if it got stained with blood. The uniform was perfected with dark, expensive silk shirts, unbuttoned to display heavy gold chains. These weren't just accessories. They were a mobile treasury. A single chain could weigh over 500 grams. They were a sign of trust within the gang. A member could pawn his chain for cash in an emergency. The most telling detail, however, was the contrast. They'd wear a massive Orthodox cross alongside a chunky secular gold ring. It was a blend of deep tradition and ruthless modernity, a perfect summary of their conflicted identity. And this extended to their bodyguards, who were dressed in cheap, identical black leather jackets, a visual representation of the hierarchy. Their possessions were not for private enjoyment. They were for public declaration. The car was the ultimate symbol. The Mercedes S600, specifically the W140 model known for its massive, boxy design, was the boat. But owning one wasn't enough. They were almost always retrofitted with crude, heavy armor, layers of steel welded into the doors, making them sag, and bulletproof glass that was often several inches thick. These weren't sleek limousines. They were rolling fortresses, a clear sign that their luxury was born from fear. Their nights were spent in clubs like Moscow's infamous The Hungry Duck, a place known for its lawlessness. Here, the rituals of spending were perfected. A top mobster would enter and immediately order vishka, literally the tower, a pyramid of champagne glasses, often 50 or 100 tall, filled with the most expensive Western champagne. They wouldn't just drink it. They'd pour it on each other, smash the glasses, and order another. The goal was to demonstrate a complete disregard for the value of money itself. The same applied to food. They'd order the entire menu not to eat, but to show they could. It was a performance of power, a way of saying, the rules of economics do not apply to me. This era of unchecked glamour couldn't last. The very ostentation that defined them made them targets, both for rival gangs and for a new, strengthening state. The ultimate symbol of this lifestyle became the mobster funeral, an event even more extravagant than their lives. Elaborate marble headstones, often featuring life-sized portraits of the deceased carved in stone, complete with the Mercedes and their favorite jewelry depicted. A single tombstone could cost $250,000, a final, defiant display of wealth. But by the late 1990s and early 2000s, the party was over. Vladimir Putin's rise to power signaled a crackdown, or more accurately, a state takeover of the lucrative industries the mob had controlled. The smartest mobsters evolved into discreet businessmen, learning that true, lasting power prefers shadows over spotlights. The flashy new Russian was replaced by the silent oligarch. The Gilded Age of the Bratva was a brief, spectacular, and violent interlude. It was a cultural explosion born from a historical vacuum. While the wild excesses are gone, their legacy is etched into modern Russia. The obsession with foreign luxury brands. The display of wealth as a primary measure of success. These are the echoes of the 1990s. The Bratva's story is a cautionary tale about what happens when identity is for sale to the highest bidder. They taught a generation that in a world without rules, style could be a weapon, and glamour for a fleeting moment could be the most powerful armor of all. If you found this glimpse into post-Soviet power compelling, there's more where that came from. Subscribe for more stories of crime, culture, and consequence. And if you want the next chapter, you know where to find it.